Hello, I'm Jenn from McCreath. Today is Monday night, September 19th, 2022. And today we had an impromptu statutory holiday in most of Canada. Well, maybe not all, most, at least half of Canada, I guess. The death of Queen Elizabeth II. The first time a British monarch has passed away in 70 years. So this is kind of new for, I guess, most of us here. I really don't know what to make of all this. My first memories of the royal family go way back to when I was probably 6 or 7 years old. I was living in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And Charles and Diana were planning to visit Halifax, Nova Scotia. And of course, the government and the school system, everyone wanted to put on a big show for these folks. And basically every kid who was 6, 7, 8 years old in Halifax, at every school, we all learned how to play the ukulele for some reason. And we had the, what's it called, the Commons Park in Halifax? There must have been 10, 15, 20,000 kids, including me, all playing this ukulele song. I think it was Farewell to Nova Scotia for Charles and Diana, who I couldn't see. I was at the very back. And I'm like, okay, why is it such a big deal? Who are these people? And they're like, what did they do to become so popular and so famous? I'm like, well, one guy was just born into a family and the other one married the guy. I'm like, okay. What about the concept of merit and earning respect? And I think that's something we think about. Times have changed. 500 years ago, the king was the dictator and ruler of the world. He oversaw the government, he oversaw the church. He could literally order somebody's head cut off and they would say, yes sir, and go ahead and deal with it. Times have changed. We have what's known as the Westminster parliamentary system in Commonwealth countries. Allegedly we have democracies now and we actually vote in governments. The head of state is more symbolic than anything else. But at the same time, I guess Queen Elizabeth, whether she wanted to or not, basically was told at a very young age, look, when your dad passes away, you're going to be the queen. And it just so happened that Daddy died young, and Princess Liz became Queen Liz, and at a very young age. And I guess it's easy to perform well when you're given such a platform to do so, but it's not so much how she became queen, but what she did when she was there. And I guess what hits me today is watching the coverage on television. It's This Is Your Life. It's interesting. Politics and public service has been a part of my life since I was a baby. Mommy was a public servant, and Daddy was a politician. And so I've evolved around this concept of government exists because of the will of the people, and there's a head of state. We've got this relationship with England. And I get it, there's a lot of people out there who are angry at the concept of white Europeans coming over to North America and claiming it as their own. And there's definitely some good points there. But that was long before Queen Elizabeth came around. And they've even interviewed Indigenous leaders who are saying at least Queen Elizabeth went out of her way to try to mend some fences and promote reconciliation. And given the, I guess, just the concept of the royal family of Great Britain, so much attention has been paid. We've got all these old political figures. I'm watching news right now, former Canadian Prime Minister, the first and only female Prime Minister we've ever had, Kim Campbell, is giving an interview. And earlier today we saw former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney give a eulogy at a service in Ottawa to commemorate the Queen. And we saw, Joe Clark, another former Prime Minister there. And it's just interesting to see what these people who actually knew the Queen, even if it was just a business relationship, it's all positive what they have to say. Hearing Brian Mulroney talk about working with the Queen on and the Nelson Mandela stuff, I'm like, it's fascinating. Okay, these people really did do a lot of good things, and it's not just a figurehead thing where you, and I guess it's ironic that Kim Campbell's on my TV, because when she became Prime Minister of Canada, she picked a brand new cabinet. This was at the dying days of the Mulroney era, and Mulroney could see the warning signs that he was going to lose the next election, so he jumped out of the way and said, let's put a new face on the party and see what we can do here. Kim Campbell said, okay, great, I'll create a new cabinet. And one of those people she put in that cabinet was, of course, Peter McCreath, my father. And when you're named a cabinet minister in the federal government, you're deemed a member of the Queen's Privy Council, and you hold the title Honourable for life. And it was ironic and nice to actually spend some time with my father this weekend. I haven't seen him in almost a year. And he was very tuned into this funeral this morning, and it's interesting. He gave me a copy of a picture of the day he was sworn into cabinet. Him shaking hands with the, what do you call him? The Governor General of Canada. And his parents, my grandparents. It's interesting how it's really a small world, I guess. And then there's me. I've worked for two offices known as the Crown Attorney, Ontario and Newfoundland. I've also worked in two courts, including criminal. Mostly criminal courts. You're dealing with HMQ versus somebody. When somebody breaks the law, the Criminal Code of Canada, and they have to go to court. On paper, the opponent is the Queen. Now it's going to be the King. That's going to be awkward for a while. Different, I guess. I always thought history was boring, but as I get older, I've tended to take more of an interest in it, and I guess specifically studying, human behavioral, sociology, psychology, things along those lines. As I've negotiated life as a trans person, I've become very aware of how other people perceive me and how other people perceive the world. And perception sometimes is reality. We build up celebrities, and sometimes it's not really warranted, but perhaps in other cases it is. I can sort of relate to, being a big fan of a sports athlete or a musician. Someone we don't really know personally, but we admire because of their work. And sure, I've felt heartbroken when some of my favorite musicians have passed away. And and likewise for athletes, even political figures. It's interesting. Sometimes when family members pass, sometimes it really hurts, sometimes not so much. Uncle so-and-so died. Well, we didn't really know him anyways. I mean, yeah, but the person's been there in your life. I mean, I'm 48. And here's a good example right here. This is a Canadian 10-cent piece. For 70 years, there's been a lady on the back of the coin. And now she just died. I'm like, when I was young growing up, it was kind of a younger lady on the coin. Same with our currency, the paper money, which is now plastic here in Canada. I don't usually have much cash on me, but I just happen to have a few bucks here, so I'm going to show you right now. The Canadian $20 note, and of course there's an older queen on there, and yeah, I don't really know what to make of all this. I'm not really sure what emotions I feel. I'm not really sure I can grasp. I get that it's a big deal to a lot of people, and I'm not saying that it's not a big deal. I guess in the grand scheme of things in my life, especially the last couple of years, have been really challenging, really rough. I've literally struggled to survive and find work and keep the bills paid. And I've had some health challenges, and I've got problems. I've got parents who are getting old. I've got a strained relationship, shall we say, with my only sibling. And I guess worrying about celebrities dying is not really, I guess in the Abraham Maslow hierarchy of needs scale, it's not a high priority. There seems to be mixed opinions on this stat holiday thing. A day of mourning. They've had 10 days of mourning now. I mean, that's usually when people die, they wake them and have the funeral within a couple days. 10 days seems like a long time to have a corpse sitting there in a box. And I mean, a corpse is just a corpse. The person is what they do when they're alive. And I guess that's what I'm looking for here. There seems to be, you think about the memories and the tributes when someone dies, you usually see biographies and reviews of their life, but that doesn't seem to be what we're seeing today. Yeah, I just don't know. We're a separate country here, Canada. In 1867 we became a country. We're aligned with this British Commonwealth system. It's cool to have allies, I guess. But I wouldn't say that England, Britain, whatever you want to call it, they're not really at the top of the food chain. They're not going to tell us what to do. If they piss us off, we might just say no thank you, goodbye. Just like, was it Barbados? Jamaica? Somebody not that long ago just said, we're leaving. We're no longer part of this Commonwealth. And the United States, they won't have anything to do with that. But guess what's on CNN all night today? The whole world is talking about this event, whether you're part of this Commonwealth or not. I just don't know. I really don't know what to make of all this. And it's just interesting to take it all in. Bottom line, I had a nice little weekend. First time in a long time I had a getaway, with a weekend away from home. My dad was here. We rented a car. I guess you call it a staycation for me because we didn't leave the province, but back to business tomorrow. So yeah, Anyone else kind of puzzled with struggling to try to figure out what this really means to them? I guess I almost feel guilty a little bit that I'm not more affected by this. Watching my dad looking at that funeral, it's like, my goodness, you could tell he was heartbroken over this. And I'm like, isn't that interesting? Anyway, I'll stop rambling. Thanks for watching, everyone.